switch now to John, and who probably doesn't need any introduction to the audience, but he is an occupational hygienist at the OHCOW Hamilton Clinic and has been so for 35 years, as we were marking today. And he has been a pioneer in a number of areas in the area of using survey tools to get collective information in order to support workplace decision-making, and also a pioneer in the workplace mental health as a health and safety issue that needs to be included along with other physical and environmental hazards. And in fact, then the intersection of those two interests of a tool and a survey and workplace mental health and the development and shepherding and support of StressAssess and the COPSUC survey that is part of the mental injury toolkit. So John, over to you, and we're interested to hearing how research into practice and applying knowledge activism and into tool development and other aspects of your work to support workers and workplaces. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Val. It's a fancy title, but really what it is a history of what happened in the development of StressAssess. And I want to start with LOARC. Actually, they sponsored a research day back in 2008, and they got activists together and OHCOW people and some academics, and we sat down and we asked some questions about what is research and how can we integrate research into our efforts to improve the workplace. And from this group, OHCOW started regular stakeholder meetings. And in 2009, Alec Farquhar sponsored or led such a meeting and established a group that was charged with supporting worker representatives and taking action on prevention and compensation. Now, a number of people on this committee, including myself, experienced some illnesses in early 2010, and so things were kind of delayed. But by the end of the year, a subcommittee had been put together, and this committee was looking at producing tools, and so they took an inventory of what tools were available. And what they found was there was one topic which was of high interest but had no tools, and that was the measurement of workplace stress. So this was the topic selected as most needing attention. And in the meantime, Nick DiCarlo invited me up to a workshop at Port Elgin for their health and safety reps. And we explored different ways of measuring stress, and we took about 6 or 7 different surveys and had these poor participants there, filled them all out. And we tried different ones and got feedback on what they liked and didn't like about the different tools. The mental injury tool group was established at about that time, and here's a list of some of the people who were there at the beginning. More people came in later and other people left. There was a lot of change. But I really have to highlight the efforts that Terry Szymanski provided. Without her, she was really the engine for the whole mental injury tool group. She's the one that called the meetings and got people interested. Her excitement about the tool was also infectious and got lots of people to get involved. Now, in 2011, the Mental Injury Tool Group came together for a workshop, and what we did is we looked at all the different theories behind measuring stress and looked at the tools. And again, these people filled out different questionnaires. Then Andy King, who was also pivotal not only in LOARC but in the mental injury tool group, connected us with Salvador Moncada from Spain. And he was part of an organization called ISTAS. It was a Spanish labor academic collaboration, very similar to LOARC in its style. And we talked to Salvador about how he used the Copenhagen psychosocial questionnaire as a tool for unions to use to measure stress in their workplaces. Now, this tool was originally created by Tage Christensen in Denmark, and so we contacted him, and he gave us permission to use it. It's widely used all over the world. And at the top right-hand corner, you'll see Salvador and Tage together, and below is Andy King, who made it. So based on that decision to use to try out the COPSUC questionnaire, we piloted at 3 union conferences over 2011, and among union members of 21 social service agencies, which ended up almost 2,200 surveys received from those groups. And we had lots of suggestions of things that were missed, and so we added them, and we tried wherever possible to use established questions rather than make our own up. And this was the results of the 3 conferences. We had almost 500 responses, and it was presented at a LOARC teach-in in Ottawa, held in 2011. And from that, we concluded that, yes, we liked the COPSUC tool, and we developed a guidebook and also a toolbox that was launched in October of 2012. And this is what the 90-page guidebook covered. It had 6 parts. Why should we care? Stress, some of the assumptions, the terminology and approaches, which is some of the theory behind it, what other jurisdictions are doing, what my legal rights and protections are, and what does a workplace action plan look like, and some resources. Especially part 5 and 6 was put together by Terry, and they were really good practical checklists on how to do a survey in your workplace, and then how to get a response from the results of those surveys. We also had a number of abstracts and posters that were accepted at different conferences. I want to highlight the one, the 3rd one here by Nancy Johnson and Erna Bushna and myself. In 2012, OHCOW did a survey of all their health and safety reps. Alan was just talking about how there isn't much research on health and safety reps, but we did the COPSUC survey with them, and we extracted the information about the offensive behaviors, both the experience and the type of symptoms that were associated with those who experienced those amongst the health and safety reps in OHCOW. Then we met with the Ministry of Labor in 2013. We explained to them what we were doing, and we also came with an ask. We asked that they recognize psychosocial hazards and that they should be covered by the General Duty Clause and other clauses within the Act, and that therefore orders could be issued for specific violations. We also asked that they publish a guide for workplaces. At that time, they had put out the MSD guide for musculoskeletal diseases, and we thought that something like that on stress. Well, almost a decade later, we finally put one out without the assistance of the Ministry of Labor, but it eventually got out. And we asked that they do a blitz of office environments, healthcare, and retail for psychosocial hazards. This had been done in Europe, in Denmark, and in the Netherlands, and there was a blitz throughout the EU in 2012 evaluating psychosocial hazards. and labor inspectors would go into workplaces with checklists to evaluate the psychosocial conditions. Also at this time, the CCOHS was helping us out, and they sponsored a webinar, and this was many years ago, about a decade ago, and over 1,000 people signed up for it, which was a first for them, and we talked about it to their audience. They also helped us develop our first app, Measure Workplace Stress, and I think it is still available online. It compares an individual's results. They answer the questions and then grade the score according to the Danish comparison population. We didn't have Canadian data at that time. And then it gave ideas on how to address certain issues. If you're concerned about recognition and appreciation, there are some ideas here. We also got involved with the international network for COPSUC users, and they had a number of workshops and international workshops every 2 years, and we attended the fifth one that was in Paris in 2015, and there we presented a paper on different ways of reporting back the results of the COPSUC survey, and we included the mental injuries tool groups, Ted Haynes, who was a big help at the beginning, and of course Terry Semensky, who was the engine driving this. In 2016, with the help of Peter Smith from the Institute of Work and Health, we connected with an organization, a polling organization called ECOS. And using them, we conducted a cross-Canada survey of workers who were employed in workplaces with at least 5 workers during February and March of 2016. And was available in English and French, and we had over 4,000 respondents, and ECOS provided weighting factors to adjust them to the labor force surveys. Peter Smith also took that information and helped us with test, retest, reliability, internal consistency, and confirmatory factor analysis and others, and these were to establish the validity and reliability. The face validity and content validity was something that the MIT group and the people who created the survey had already done. And here is the article that was published in 2019 that established the validity and reliability of the survey. We also worked with system partners, the Ministry of Labor, WSIB, and the other HSAs. Mental Health Working Group, which put on a number of webinars to raise awareness about mental health and also to talk about mental harm prevention. During one of these, the Ministry of Labor also presented this, and just as we had asked the Ministry of Labor to recognize that mental disorders were equivalent to physical disorders, and as Sylvia was saying earlier, still calling for that, but at that time the ministry basically said that for the purposes of the Act, mental stress, chronic and traumatic, are not occupational illnesses and do not trigger notification requirements. And they also don't meet the critical injury definition. So they were insistent that the Act only applies to physical hazards, not mental hazards. The CCOHS also helped us to develop our StressAssess tool, which is an online tool which allows workplaces to create their own survey and distributes them and then have an analysis and a report generated. And Sue Freeman and Alan Powell and a number of other people at the CCUHS helped us build this, and it was launched in January of 2018. And it's still available and still being used regularly. 2019, we did another eco survey, and again, we had the same similar number of respondents, but we had over 600 people who we could connect with the previous survey, so we could look at how things had changed. And again, we went to the next workshop, which was in Santiago, Chile, and there, this meeting was specifically focused on some changes that were made to the COPSUC survey. We originally started with COPSUC 2, and now we're using COPSUC 3, and we were trying to establish the properties, the validity and reliability of the Canadian English and French surveys. This information that we shared at that meeting was eventually written up into an article and published, and is available free online. And then the next workshop was supposed to be a more practical application of the survey, and it was held in Istanbul in 2019. And there we reported on a collaboration, again, that Terry was key in spearheading with members of OHCOW in the corrections, provincial corrections ministry, and there we had also people from management from the ministry, and also people from Queen's University who helped us with qualitative analysis of the comments at the end of the survey. And at that time, we also looked at the changes from 2019 to the Across Canada surveys. And what we found was that job security scores had improved, but there was less full-time work. And we were kind of curious at whether this was by preference. There were slightly better scores overall across the board, except for sexual harassment, threats of violence, and physical violence, which had slightly increased. There were decreases in bullying, discrimination, and vicarious offensive behaviors. And a matched analysis of people who had filled both surveys out reflected similar results as when you just looked at the overall averages. But the question that arose was, is just the new normal? Does the baseline of what people consider a stressful workplace keep changing over time? And if things get worse, but people expect it to get worse, we're wondering if that changes. Then the pandemic hit, and we were watching reports coming out of China and supporting a number of union health and safety staff, especially in the healthcare field, answering questions and providing information. And we formed an ad hoc group of union health and safety reps, activists, and interested academics, and started to make a survey for healthcare workers during the pandemic. We launched it in April 6th, and then soon after that, Dorothy Wigmore, Alec Farquhar, and Laura Lazansky took the healthcare one and made it more generic so that all workers could use it. And that was launched at the end of April. That was during the first wave. We relaunched the surveys in the second wave in November of the same year. We had almost 6,000 completed responses for the healthcare survey, and getting close to 4,000 for the non-healthcare workers. And the second wave, you could see the survey fatigue hitting in, not even 1,000 healthcare workers and almost 2,000 non-healthcare workers in the second. survey. And with Peter Smith, we and the ad hoc committee, we presented the reports, and it was quite interesting. These are the scores of anxiety symptoms broken down by whether people are working at home or are working at work and feel that all of their personal protective equipment needs were met, 50 to 99%, or less than 50%, or none of their needs were met. And you can see how their anxiety scores increase the less PPE they have. And it's even worse working with not enough PPE than not working at all, which was quite interesting. And also, being at work and having all your needs met was better than working remotely. And when we looked at the infection control procedures, it was even more bigger difference between working remotely and working at work with all your needs met. So yeah, what we found was that there was a significant amount of fear, anxiety, stress, and depression amongst workers who were not working in healthcare but working outside. It was also in healthcare, and that their mental health experiences were related to how well they were protected by infection control procedures and personal protective equipment. And the lowest level of anxiety was amongst people who had their infection control practices effectively addressed, and that was even lower than those working at home. And the highest levels were those who did not have those protections in place. These were written up into two articles, one for healthcare and one for non-healthcare. We also worked with education workers in the second wave and created a survey for them, and again, over 4,000 respondents. And we compared the education workers who were in person compared to online, and online teachers and education support workers were doing a lot worse doing online than in person. These results were also published in two papers. And finally, about a year ago, we did another eco survey, the third survey, and we presented that at Mayday last year. And the takeaway points from that one was that flexibility with respect to working from home seems to work the best. Don't work too many hours. That's a no-brainer. Take your breaks. It was amazing the amount of difference between people who took their breaks and those who didn't. It was quite a contrast. Keep the amount of paperwork under control. Things get worse if you have to put in extra unpaid hours to get your work done. And there are some advantages to non-full-time work, but there are also some sacrifices. Good social capital, which is trust, justice, and respect in the workplace, is associated with very positive outcomes. And we desperately need to support those for whose work involves emotional demands. Now we have, we also had hosted the 9th International COPSUC workshop in Canada last year. It was very small because of the COVID restrictions and things like that. We had some online people as well. We've put together a number of workplace tools that are available online. We took the 90-page guidebook and made it into a very nice, shorter and more colorful booklet that has the 5-step approach and some two case studies that work through the 5 steps. And we have a number of videos of workplaces that have used the survey, some a number of times, and you can, some of it was good experience, some of it was not so good. It's a mixed reaction. So what's next? Well, the MIT group, the way it was established originally, has basically evaporated or retired. So maybe we need to reconstitute the MIT group as a kind of a community practice. The partnership with the CCOHS has weakened. The people that we worked with have mostly left the organization. So, but the product is still seeing regular use. Our partnership with the IWH continues. We're actually working on a paper currently with members there on wage theft, people working extra hours and not getting paid. There are other provinces that are interested in doing the StressAssess. There seems to be a lot of interest in BC and also from Quebec, and we're wondering if we can find partners there who can take that up. We need to update StressAssess, incorporate the 2023 reference data. And personally, I'm looking at retiring sometime and passing on the baton, and we're working with people internally in OHCOW who are interested in carrying on this type of work. And the 10th International COPSUC workshop will be held in Malmo, Sweden next year, and that will be. But our goal with all of this work was try to build the bridge between research and practice, and we hope that the tools that we have produced have made some improvement. Furthermore, to follow up on some of Alan's comments, the law always seems to lag, not to mention enforcement, especially with psychosocial hazards, with the ministry not willing to accept it on par with physical hazards. StressAssess is a tool, not a solution, to collect and systematically present workers' experiences. The key is not necessarily to do the survey, but to have a strategy to convince the workplace to address the concerns that might be validated by the survey if you use it. But without a determination to do something with the results, even a tool that has the best evidence possible will fail. It's not necessarily the quality of the tool, although a better tool may make things easier, but it's the determination and commitment to improve that will make the difference. And that's where knowledge activists come in. Okay, thank you. And I'll stop there.
Thanks a lot, John. Thanks for the presentation, but of course, bigger thanks for the stewardship of the issue for all the years that you've described, and yeah, it continues to have an impact. I think it's I think of the term servant leader because I think that those of us engaged in this work, I guess, that we're always trying to make things better. But in workplaces across the province, the country, and any small shop that calls us, right? But that in developing the tools and recognizing the knowledge activism, features, I think, and being able to equip people to further their knowledge and apply it in the workplace, I think is actually critical. So I thank actually all the speakers for their efforts from different aspects of that. So we can open it up now to questions and answers. We have a few minutes, and our speakers may be able to stay longer if need be. There was a question I missed, I think, in the switch from Al, and you answered it. So I don't know if you wanted to elaborate further on the question about government support, particularly at the provincial level, in fostering knowledge activism. Alan?
No, that's fine. But I mean, if John has any insights to add, I think he mentioned the role of the ministry in Ontario, implementing it into their legislation, but I'm not sure. maybe the role of implementing stress assess, governments implementing stress assess or helping employers.
Yes, that's something that we asked them to do back in 2014 or 13. I can't remember exactly. But they said basically that was the job of the health and safety associations, and so that's when the group, the mental health and group. Workplace mental health group was established, and Val was actually a big part of that for longer than I was. And we did try to raise awareness and make sure that all the organizations that had tools had staff that were able to support those tools. But I don't think it went too much farther than that. With the compensation board, at first they would not compensate chronic stress, and that was challenged, and it was found to be unconstitutional for them to discriminate between mental and physical disability, and so chronic stress was accepted. However, chronic stress was accepted at a higher standard than other occupational diseases. Instead of just having a contributing, or making a material contribution to the disease, it had to be the predominant disease when it came to mental health. So we asked, well, I asked at the meetings with the ministry and the other partners if the ministry could recognize the equivalence of physical and mental health. And the answer I was told, although I don't think it was official at the time, was basically if employers are clamoring for it, they'll probably get it. And so far they haven't. And so I think that's where it sits right now, is that unless there is pressure or a legal proceeding that challenges this distinction between physical and mental injuries in the Act, it will remain.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, there is a system committee, an Ontario Prevention System Committee now that's it's a combination of violence and harassment prevention and workplace mental health. And we'll see later in the month a number of members of that committee. So particularly WSPS and PSHSA, who are two of the four health and safety associations, have developed some tools, and they are more collaborative and than they were, but they're not. I think everyone comes at things from their own perspective and feels that perspective is unique. So they're developing tools that fit with the perspective and with the presumably with the sort of, I wouldn't say demands, but or needs of their clients, or of how to serve their clients, or the feedback, I guess we would say. So, but they are more collaborative, and it'll be interesting to hear them present. So some of that is on violence risk assessment and its evolution into a new tool, and also PSHSA has developed a new workplace mental health tool that involves forming committees and working through things, but they're not specifically using StressAssess. It has been shared and by the health and safety associations in some circumstances, but they don't rely on it heavily as a system tool, unfortunately. I have one little. I was going to say, in terms of provinces, the right to participate, I think, is partly knowledge activism, but how it's actually executed in workplaces and in detail. And so the joint health and safety committees and health and safety reps and then sort of mandatory training for them, and even including consideration of hazards and their prevention. All of that is a start, I think, on paper of some of this. It's trying to foster knowledge as well as then knowledge, activism, representation, but I'm not sure it's fully evolved, I guess. And so that's something else to think about. Other areas to influence, even potentially, in terms of certification training or other efforts we could bring to bear. But our role, we're not a training organization, so our role is to learn science and then to translate that into information and or tools that can be of value to workers in workplaces, and then to support their implementation. Great. And I see Ken had a question about a previous talk from last year, so I'm going to follow up on that.
But can I just, before you go move on?
Yeah.
Val, I just wanted to address something that Logan's question about what can governments do. I think I would have something that I think needs to be added there is the importance of enforcement and the extent to which reps need to have the protection that Ministry of Labor inspectors are supposed to offer them, especially when they're in situations when they're being harassed, threatened, but also just generally when then employers refuse to follow the regulations that exist. Now, improved regulations, of course, are always on the table as important benefits, but just enforcing the ones that exist would make a big difference. And for non-unionized workers, a lot of the things that are said today about the mental health strains on reps are even worse for them, substantially worse, I would suggest. And anything that helps to support them, including Ministry of Labor inspections and willingness to act against employers, but also I would suggest support for worker centers would be an important step that governments can take to begin to address the deficits that non-union workers are facing. Because many of them, they just don't have anyone to talk about organizational support. They have virtually nothing.
Yes, it's true. We've discovered that in our work with migrant farm workers and temporary foreign workers and newcomers, that even the anti-reprisal protections are not really protective. And so we are very cautious, even, and like we share that information as we ought to, because it's, it's part of the structure of the system, but we do it in a guarded way, because there's still a long way to go to realize the full level of protection, I think, and worker engagement that's in the model of the legislation in Ontario, at least. But Sylvia, did you have something you wanted to add? And then there's a question here about applying.
Yeah. I was just going to say that, like there's the things, obviously enforcement's a huge issue, which we all can agree on. But I do think that, like from a legislative standpoint, when you look at Quebec, and I mentioned earlier that, they do have mental health included in their right to refuse legislation. So there's no reason Ontario and every other jurisdiction should have less protection for workers. So, we from Labor need to work with the federations of labor and others to push to have it included. And for workplaces that do have unions, whether they have a joint health and safety committee or a rep, they have to really be involved in assessing all the risks, and they want to be at that table helping to develop programs. And, I would recommend them using OHCOW's resources, the StressAssess, the mental injury toolkit, and those resources, and take those initiatives and implement them in their workplace. And when we look at just workplace inspections, for example, our workplaces have to add categories on there to include psychosocial hazards. And when they are, identified, then they have to do everything to address them. And I do think because mental health is clearly the #1 global issue affecting the Canadian economy when it comes to, the amount of lost productivity in the workplace. It's a financial incentive for employers to try and do what they can to promote the mental health and include that in their overall health and safety programs, because when we look at how many workers are absent in any given day in Canada as a result of mental health issues, or are off on long-term or short-term leave, it's a reason to care. And I mean, others have mentioned, John did, and others, the pandemic and the effects of that. We're still reeling in and continuing to feel that additional pressure from that alone. So I mean, something has to happen to change the way the culture is, and that society acknowledges the importance of good mental health. So those are just some thoughts that I wanted to share.
Thanks. I see. Oh, do you have something to add, John? You're muted. You're muted. John, you're muted.
Yeah, I was looking at the question in the chat about small workplaces.
Yes.
We actually find that StressAssess works better in small workplaces than large workplaces. And the reason is first of all, we get a better response rate in a smaller workplace. And if a small workplace approaches us with a desire to improve the psychosocial conditions in the workplace, that really helps, once you get the results and brainstorm some ideas on how to move forward. The ability of a smaller organization to respond is much better. And since our services are free, there's no financial barrier to them engaging with us on this. Whereas with a large workplace, you're often faced with low response rates, often below 30%. Plus, once you get the results and break them down by department, if there isn't someone in each department who is willing to take the results and work with them to apply them to their situation, then nothing will happen. And if you do a survey and nothing happens, it's worse than doing no survey at all. If you raise people's expectations for change and then disappoint them, things will actually be more negative than they were if you hadn't done it.
That makes sense. Okay. Well, it's just after 12, and I don't see any other questions in the chat nor any hands up. So I'm wondering if each speaker has some last few words. I did put the link for the Mayday page on our website, which then links to the registration for the other 2 right now. And by the end of today, we'll have the events posted for the 22nd and the 29th. Next week's focus is actually even hosted and includes COPSOC network people from around the world, which is really enriches the discussion, I think, to see the parallels and the unique challenges and solutions that they've come up with, which is really interesting. And then on the 15th, we're going to hear about some research projects in Ontario around PTSD, around suicide prevention, and around unique factors affecting northern workplaces. And then on the 22nd, we're going to hear about efforts in the system with respect to pain management and opioid harm reduction, and also workplace violence risk assessment. And John's going to come back and talk about the importance of survey validation, but also the other sort of more qualitative aspects of supporting surveys so they can be effective in the workplaces. And the last week is a number of tools, 2 shared by PSHSA, one their version of a stress. It's not entirely a survey. It includes a survey, but it's the collaborative system of engaging to jointly problem solve workplace mental health. Also, their work on workplace violence and education, and then a new tool by OHCOW called Job Assess. which includes cognitive and psychosocial hazards. So that's the month, but in the meantime, let's hear from our speakers anything to add further about knowledge activism in general and its role in workplace mental health and injury prevention. We'll go to Sylvia first.
No, I just wanted to say I thank you for inviting me today, and I think these sessions that OHCOW is putting on is very helpful, and being able to share that information on the websites later for others who aren't able to participate today is really beneficial. So thank you for that, and I just want to congratulate John once again and thank him for everything that he has done all these years in health and safety. He's very respected and appreciated, and I am really feel fortunate that I've been able to work with John, and USW has over the years. And thank you, Val and OHCOW, for the invitation today. And I thought Alan's presentation was excellent, as was John's.
Great, thanks, Sylvia, and thank you for all of USW's efforts to get us here in so many different ways, and for taking the time to share that with us today, and for your ongoing support of OHCOW. I'm just going to paste in our YouTube channel. You reminded me that the video, because we've also live streamed on YouTube, it will render as a video right away if you want to share with anybody in the short term, and then we will post each talk in a playlist in the next few days. Thanks. Okay, Alan, any
I guess the only final thing I would say, or just emphasis that I would place on the point that ultimately the reps are pretty critical to whether or not change actually happens in a workplace on the issue of mental health specifically. I think they are pretty critical. And in that respect, it's really important, I think, for all organizations involved in labor to pay attention to their stress and mental health and do what they can to address it. Because I might be wrong, maybe there are a lot of things going on around supporting the mental health of activists, but my guess would be that there isn't, and they're often left to their own devices. And as I said, knowledge activists many of them are quite resilient and quite strong, and some of the key characteristics of knowledge activism is protective in many ways in and of itself. But nevertheless, organizations need to step up, recognize the problem and the issue, and provide as much support as they can.
Thanks. Yeah, I think that really resonated.
And thank you again to everybody for.
Thank you, Alan. And I think that right that we need to pay attention. I was just wondering, John, I know you've run the survey at conferences many times, and sorry, I don't know if we have a mic open. I'm not getting a lot of feedback. But anyways, John, did you run it several times? Did you ever notice a higher level of stress, or converse, that here's people working collectively against a common cause? There might be even benefit to that.
Well, as I mentioned with ONA, we did the survey when we first put it together in 2012, and they surveyed over 200 of their health and safety reps at that time. And then we redid the survey last year with their health and safety reps and got over 400 responses. And it was quite a dramatic difference. Things were a lot worse for health and safety reps now than they were a decade ago. Yeah, that really underlines the concerns that Alan was mentioning.
Yep.
But finally, I just want to say that, OHCOW, we've created tools. We've tried to help workplaces do something. But as Alan says, and as Sylvia knows with her people, unless you have somebody in the workplace, a knowledge activist who is a bulldog who will grab an issue and won't let go despite all the resistance they get from management, from fellow workers, even from the ministry sometimes. You know, without people like that, our work is wasted. So I really want to thank the activists in the workplaces who take these issues on and keep at it. And any way we can support them, let us know. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. That is, yes. Should applaud them, and yeah, and what we can do to serve and support them, right? And so we're always interested in hearing back from people on that too. Okay, I think we'll close right now. And as I said, we'll be posting the videos on our YouTube channel, and the slide decks will be on the Mayday page. And we do welcome people coming to the next 4 sessions, because we are going to spend the month talking about this from different angles. So appreciate everyone attending, especially the speakers. And Tony, thanks for your technical support. And now we'll turn it off. Say goodbye. Have a good day and happy May Day again. Thanks for joining us. Bye.